Okay, hello. This is my lesson number 9 in a series of lectures on how the United States is starting a new Cold War with Russia. And today we're going to focus upon the history of U.S. efforts to block USSR and then later Russian gas sales to Europe and or promote alternative Russian gas. This being between a period of 1982 up to 2008 with the Georgian crisis. We'll talk about that. Alright, so U.S. began attacking Russian gas way back in 1982 when the Reagan administration blocked the Urengoy to Uzhhorod pipeline. There's Urengoy gas fields up there in Russia. Uzhhorod is a little town on the border of Ukraine and Slovakia. All right. Then it fed, Czechoslovakia and then even into Austria back then. All right. So USA attacks continue today, and they've been recently manifest in congressional sanctions, joint congressional sanctions against the Russian Nord Stream 2 and Turk Stream 2 pipelines. All right. And those attacks are based upon a supposed Russian threat. But I want to show you that Russia has some serious weaknesses. All right. And I showed you this through the history, if you retained any of the history that I taught yesterday. So Russia loses market if they threaten European energy security. They don't gain anything from this, right? They lose, right? And that's been proven historically. After the threats in the early 2000s, when Russia was trying to discipline Ukraine, well, Europe moved 7 times, right, openly. I mean, they're probably, doing things unannounced, I'm sure, but openly, 7 major things to get non-Russian gas, right? So that's not smart and good for Russia. They're just hurting themselves. Russia couldn't leverage Ukraine when Ukraine was right next to Russia, all right, and totally dependent upon Russian gas. Now, you got Europe that's further away, right? You got to go through these countries, and it's protected by NATO, and they have alternative sources of gas. Well, if Russia couldn't leverage Ukraine, you think they're going to leverage, get some sort of political, military leverage on Europe? Okay. Now, Russia lacks price control, price power, with increasing competition. Not only is there existing competition, there's increasing competition, and there's threats of more pipelines coming in. But the big threat is the threat of alternative energies, especially wind and solar, which have the greatest promise of becoming super cheap. Right? That's what's going to win the day in the future. Price. All right. Russia is militarily weak. All right, I'll show you that. Then the last thing I want to say is Russia has Dutch disease. All right. So a little background here. Gas exports to Europe were a boon for Russia starting in the mid, 1980s, but became an economic vulnerability in terms of, one, overdependence upon a single sector that was vulnerable to market evolution. New gas suppliers coming in, new options for energy. And 2, overdependence upon the export of a primary product, natural resource, causing Dutch disease that creates a currency disadvantage for other sectors, especially high-tech, which means new products and thus new markets. But also manufacturing, which means what? That means value-added, which is where you make your bucks, right? Far more than, exporting a primary product. All right, and what does that result in? That results in Russia having a third-world type economy. In fact, the USSR became heavily dependent upon import of the equipment and technology for their oil and gas industries. All right? So they became dependent upon the West. All right. So I want to expand upon what Dutch disease is real quickly. Dutch disease is when you increase export of a raw material, all right, for other countries to buy this raw material. They have to take their currency, all right, bring it in, exchange it for the local currency. In the case of Dutch, who had gas, right, the first to find gas in Europe, right, that's the guilder. So that increases demand for the domestic currency or guilder. What that does is that increases currency value. What that does is that jacks up price of all their products, which then hurts their exports of those goods. So it ends up, the benefit to this section ends up hurting other sectors of their economy, you know, especially high-tech and manufactured goods, right, which means decreased value added, decreased new products, new markets, and results in a weak economy, right? Now that's one way of looking at it. Another way of looking at it is balance of trade, how you have to recycle currency. Otherwise, you have a big currency value problem, and the value of currency is going to go up. So, whereas the value of other nations' currency is going to go down, which will make it prohibitive to sell your raw material, right? I mean, that's why China, recycles currency, and both of these were a big part of the reason why the South had such a poor economy. All right, it was a dirt poor economy, except for a small handful of super rich slave plantation owners, right? And of course, the other reason was it was a slave-based economy, which undercut basically the disposable income and the spending power of the population. All right. Now, oil and gas in Russia grew to become 17% of their economy. That's a big chunk, just in one sector, hydrocarbons. And it was 70% of their exports. That's huge, right? And then 80% of Russian gas to Europe passed through Ukraine. That's why Ukraine was so important, right? The vast bulk of Russian gas went to Ukraine, either this way or this way. All right, now these are not strengths, these are vulnerabilities. So the idea is Russia is vulnerable, right now, in the immediate, but also in the long run, right? Through its dependence upon gas exports, which will become a big weakness and vulnerability with Dutch disease, in combination with the onset of cheap wind and solar power. It's coming. Alright, now by 1996, Russian gas sales to Europe was both large and increasing, with additional pipes being built. Alright, the Yamal Europe and Jamal were built between 94 and 97. Alright, so the Yamal Europe is another pipeline feeding Europe, and that will start in 94 construction. Construction of the Jamal will start in 95. So this is a direct shot straight to Germany. Through Poland, straight to Germany. All right, Poland can get that gas, but Germany's a big consumer, big energy consumer. All right. Okay. So in the midst of this, they're expanding. With Russia expanding, the U.S. seeks an alternative. All right. They want to cut into Russia's power. All right. They don't want Russia to get too wealthy. So they propose. U.S. proposes a Trans-Caspian pipeline to connect the Turkmenistan gas, which is the 6th largest gas reserves in the world. Huge source of gas here. Connect that through the Caspian, Trans-Caspian, through pipelines, either going through the Black Sea and the White Stream, or going through Turkey. Well, it's got to go through Azerbaijan, then Georgia, then Turkey, through the Trans-Anatolian pipeline onto Europe. All right? Okay, yeah. All right, so that's in the works. They proposed that, but then this starts taking real shape in 1999 when U.S. signs formal agreement with Turkmenistan, Azerbaijan, Turkey, Georgia, and Turkey. Again, keep in mind that all this gas has to go through Georgia. That's going to be important. They signed it for a Trans-Caspian pipeline with U.S. companies General Electric and Bechtel conducting the feasibility study. So that's a pretty serious commitment here, right? You're doing a feasibility study. Now, Is the USA clearly playing geopolitics with Russian gas? Yeah, right? And is this a threat to Russian gas? Yeah. But is it fair play in terms of free market business competition? In my opinion, yeah, it's all right. Right? It's U.S. government brokering, kind of assisting a deal, but it's stopping short of subsidizing. Right? We don't want to cross that boundary because we don't want other countries, right, other governments subsidizing their companies against us. Right? As much as possible, we want to make this about free market, all right, free competition. All right? Because once countries start subsidizing, that sends you down the path of economic nationalism, which then has led through the past through wars. World War I, World War II, all right? We don't need that. Now, the U.S. has been meddling with Ukraine politics at least as far back as the 2004 Orange Revolution, all right? Through U.S. pro-democracy NGOs in Ukraine, and the spending of $5 billion, according to Victoria Nuland, right here, a little short lady here, who was Assistant Secretary of State for Near East, which includes all the, Eastern Europe, and I guess that includes Russia too, I'm sure. Turkey, that's Near East. All right. Here's a picture of her 2 weeks before the Maidan Revolution. All right. So she's meeting with the guys who stole power, a pro-West group here, 2 weeks before they stole power, right? So, we're working with them, right? Without doubt. Given $5 billion for pro-West, right, to help Ukraine attain its European aspirations, right? And I'll talk about this in detail later. Explain this. All right, so now 80% of Russian gas, as we said, went through Ukraine. Now, I expect some people to attack that, whoa, that's not true today. Well, yeah, that's not true today because Russia has built a number of bypasses, right? But keep in mind, the reason why they built these bypasses was because Ukraine was screwing them. Stealing gas, not paying for gas, big bills building up, right? And then breaking contracts. So here is a list of Russian bypass efforts. And I guess I'll hold off on this for a second. We'll talk about this in a second. All right, so beginning in 2005, Ukraine's bad behavior becomes a big problem. All right, now their bad behavior started way back in '92, theft of gas and so forth. All right, but it got big by 2005, and then Russia's got to do something about it. Theft of gas, non-payment, big and growing debt, contract violations. All right, so Russia's only leverage on Ukraine was short-term cutoff of gas to Ukraine, right? So they're trying to get Ukraine to behave and stop doing what they're doing, all right? Now, can they invade them? Man, it's costly to invade them. Russia has a crap military, actually, all right? All right, so they try to just cut off gas for 3 days, all right? But the thing about it is, all right, do they hurt Ukraine? Yeah. But do they hurt themselves? Yeah. They lose revenue, but even more so, they threaten Europe energy security. Now, that's not in their interest because Europe, they're not going to lay down and die, all right, and be passive and say, oh, there's nothing. They're going to immediately start looking for alternative sources of gas, right? If they can't trust Russian, they're going to look for something else, even if they have to pay more, even if they have to invest for time in building the infrastructure, all right, the pipelines. All right, so so they cut off gas to Ukraine and thus to Europe, which threatens European energy security, their economy, right? And then this caused Europe to push for alternative sources in the Trans-Caspian pipeline, the White Stream, and Trans-Anatolian pipeline 7 times. And I showed you that in my okay. Well, you can't see it. Some of it's cut off. But here is the first South Caucasus pipeline, White Stream. White Stream proposed, Trans-Caspian, White Stream, Southern Caucasus, White Stream. White Stream again. White Stream. Oh, no. Southern Caucasus. That's Trans-Anatolian. All right. So Ukraine causes problems here. They rush to try to get other sources of gas. Now, that's what I said. All right. I fully expect that people have been saying, oh, bullshit. That's debatable. Man, that's proven out in history. That's shown what they did. That's just common sense. All right. You know, I mean, when people use that debatable argument, right? They have no logical, analytical, argument. They just say it's debatable, right? And then they feel justified in believing whatever they want to believe based on nothing. It's one-word reality. All right. Okay, so 7 times they're pushing for non-Russian gas, right? Through Turkmenistan gas, going through the Trans-Caspian, or through White Stream, or through the Trans-Anatolian. But either way, it's going through Azerbaijan, Georgia, all right? No matter what, Georgia's key here, all right? Okay, so 7 times. These are the 7 times. I'm not going to go through them all again. All of which will send gas through Georgia. This is a threat to Russia and a clear limit to their leverage over Europe, right? And then in 2008, at the height of both Ukraine screwing Russia and Europe pushing for non-Russian gas through Georgia, so these are connected, right? 7 times they pushed for it, right? The U.S. Senate, House of Representatives, and President Bush all call for Ukraine and Georgia to join NATO, right? In early 2008, which jams Russia with military protection threat for both Ukraine bad behavior and non-Russian gas. So Russia eventually reacts by invading Georgia, which is portrayed in the U.S. as a blatant military aggression. But was it really an aggression? Was it really offensive? Or was it defensive? Right? So let's talk about the Russian efforts to bypass. Well, let's talk about this. So here is Russian threats to European energy security. So Ukraine is stealing gas. They're not paying gas. So in 2006, January, Russia cuts off gas for 3 days. Right? Why did Russia limit it to 3 days? Like I said, they threaten their own market access. They can't, threaten Europe that much. Otherwise, Europe is going to panic and get something else. All right. Now, I know that's been debated, right? Right. But it's just basic common sense. Right? I don't know what planet you're from to not understand that. All right. March 2008, high Ukraine unpaid debt. Russia reduces gas flows. So this is afterwards. In January 2009, this is after the Georgia thing, they reduced gas one more time. Ukraine contract violation, so Russia reduced gas in response to that again. All right, so here's the Russian efforts to bypass Ukraine. Right, 2003, Blue Stream, to bypass Ukraine, Moldova, Romania, Bulgaria. 2005, with Ukraine diverting gas, stealing gas, and not paying for gas, Russia considered the Yamal 2 to bypass Ukraine. Right, I'll show you these pipelines in a second here. And then in 2011, the Nord Stream 1 begins operation, right, bypassing Ukraine, but also Belarus and Poland. And then 2012, construction begins on the South Stream to bypass Ukraine again, but also to oppose the White Stream. And it's canceled due to European sanctions in 2014 from Russia's annexation of Crimea. And then in 2018, the Turk Stream is completed. So you got the Nord Stream 1, Turk Stream 1, and now you're building a Nord Stream 2 and a Turk Stream 2, and this is what Congress is now attacking. All right, so the first pipeline bypass is right here, the Blue Stream. That's 2003, and that was meant to bypass this route here through Ukraine, Moldova, Romania, Bulgaria to Turkey. In Instead, you get a straight shot here. I mean, it's going to be more cost effective, shorter length of pipe is going to go through, less energy intensive, and straight shot to the anchor, right? But also they get to avoid transit fees, and more importantly, they get to avoid Ukraine stealing gas, right? All right, so next one was, so in 2005, Ukraine is stealing a lot of gas and not paying bills. So Russia is considering bypassing, all the gas coming from the Yamal fields up here, right, through these two pipelines, the Northern Lights and the Yamal Europe. They come together, and some of that gas branches down here, goes to Ukraine. Well, they're going to bypass that. Say, screw Ukraine, right? They're stealing their gas, right? We'll go through Poland. Poland's, got to pay their transit fees, but at least they're not going to steal your gas, right? All right, and then 2011, that's when the Nord Stream 1. Yeah, I got a picture of Nord Stream 1. No, let's see here. Yeah, there's Nord Stream 1. Nord Stream 1 coming this way, right? And then 2018, they build the 2012, they start building the South Stream, right? Bypass Ukraine again. Also tap into that Balkan market. And that's canceled due to the sanctions from when Russia took Crimea in 2014. All right. And then in 2018, they built the Turk Stream coming across here. It's to replace the South Stream. Taps into Turkey. Probably have less problems with sanctions with Turkey. All right. And then they're building the Nord Stream 2, which comes from here. Same place in Germany. And then the Turk Stream 2, which pretty much parallels the Turk Stream 1. All right. They're all bypassing Ukraine. All right. Ukraine's giving them problems. All right. So now I want to talk about in detail this 2008 Russian invasion of Georgia crisis. All right. And we'll see how it was a result of the U.S. jamming Russia with a threat. All right. Now, people say U.S. doesn't do bad things. U.S. doesn't do aggressive things. Man, I showed you already, right, with undeniable historical facts and data that the U.S. is a constant warmonger nation, right? I mean, the perception is so far whacked out of reality in people's minds. All right. So in March of 2005, Russia accuses Ukraine of gas theft, right, and not paying bills. And so in January 2006, Russia cuts off gas to Ukraine for 3 days, right? And 2007, dispute on high Ukraine debt. Russia reduces gas again, all right? It's a threat to Europe's energy security. So do you think Europe's just going to sit on their ass and passively do nothing? No. They immediately push seven times for 3 non-Russian gas sources or pipelines, all of which run through Georgia, right? The Trans-Caspian, Trans-Anatolian, White Stream. There's Trans-Caspian, White Stream, Trans-Anatolian. All that gas is going to go through Georgia. So Georgia's a key player here. All right. Then Ukraine and Georgia. So Ukraine and Georgia are linked. Ukraine is causing the bad behavior, right? Forcing these European nations to seek alternative non-Russian gas, and all that non-Russian gas is going to go through Georgia, right? Whether it's coming out of Turkmenistan or the Shah Deniz field, which was discovered about 1999, right? About the time when the U.S. was planning on building this Trans-Caspian, they got the deal all set up. But then they found, right about the same time, they found the Shah Deniz field, and that kind of put threw a wrench into this, because why would you build this extra pipeline when you got gas right here, right? Plenty of gas right there. All right. So let's see, Trans-Caspian, Trans-Anatolian, White Stream, Ukraine, Georgia are linked. And then first thing that happens on February 14th of 2008, the U.S. Senate passes Congressional Resolution number 439 for Georgia and Ukraine to join NATO. All right. Okay, now why Georgia? Why are they pushing? Why are they pushing to get Georgia and Ukraine to join NATO? Why those two countries? Do you think it was just a random selection, right? Like they're throwing darts in the board, and here's a map on the wall, and throw some darts, right? Oh, look, one landed on Georgia. Oh, look, one landed on Ukraine, right? So yeah, here, this is how they decided, right? They're like, see, hey, why don't we expand NATO membership? Who should we expand it to? I don't know. All right. Well, let's play pin the tail on a donkey. Throw darts at the board. Let's see. Right. So let's say, okay, we're gonna play pin the tail on a donkey. They put a big map of the world on the wall. Right. They get a bunch of darts. Right. Then they get Wolfowitz. Right. And what do? They pin the tail on his ass. They pin the tail on a donkey. Right. And then they put a blindfold on him. Then they give him a handful of darts and say, hey, throw these darts at the wall and see where they land. Right? Well, Wolfowitz, just look at the guy. He doesn't look very athletic. So I'm willing to bet that most of the darts just hit the floor. But some hit the wall and, let's say they hit nothing. They hit nothing but water, ocean. Right? You're not gonna expand NATO to an ocean. But two darts happened to hit, a land. One happened to hit Ukraine and one happened to hit Georgia. That's how they decided. Yeah, that's how they decided Ukraine and Georgia. Oh, come on. You know that they're linking these two together, right? And these two are a direct threat to Russia. They're jamming Russia with a threat. All right, and then, so this is February 14th, then April 1st, the U.S. House of Representatives passes the Congressional Resolution 997 for Ukraine and Georgia to join NATO. And then, same day, Bush announces he strongly supports Ukraine-Georgia map. That's accelerated membership to NATO. So this is what, I'll just cut down here. So this is what Bush said. This is a direct quote from it. I strongly believe that Ukraine and Georgia should be given MAP. That's membership action plans. Right? And there are no trade-offs, period. Right? He right? What is MAP? That's a fast-track accelerated NATO membership. And then here's how Russia responded. Right? This is reported in The Guardian on April 1st. Right? Russia has made its opposition to Ukrainian and Georgian membership abundantly clear, membership to NATO. In a briefing last night, the Kremlin spokesman, Dmitry said any attempt by NATO to expand further towards Russia's borders will upset the region's strategic stability. So they're threatened by this. All right? Now, so they push that, right? April 1st, by April 1st, they're all pushing it. House, Senate, President. Then 2 weeks later, on April 16th, Putin signs a formal decree establishing direct ties between Russia and South Ossetia. What the hell? Oh, shoot here. This moved. I'm sorry. I got to fix this. Okay. So South Ossetia is a province within Georgia. All right. It wants to join Russia. It wants to break away, join Russia. Now, Abkhazia is this part here. It also wants to break away, join Russia. Right? So Putin makes formal ties with these guys. Right? Now, what is that doing? Right? You don't make it's making a treaty with South Ossetia. You don't make a treaty. You don't make formal ties with a province within a country. Right? So what he's doing is he's given de facto Russian recognition of South Ossetian independence. And what he's stating to them and stating to the world is he's going to back up their independence. Russia is now supporting their independence. Right? Yeah. So that's de facto Russian recognition of South Ossetia's independence. And then after that, Russia has a military buildup on the border of Georgia. They're getting ready, right, to do something. They're getting ready to invade Georgia, right? And then on August 1st, South Ossetia initiates military action against Georgia by shelling across into Georgian villages. Right, so South Ossetia starts the attack. Now Georgia's got to respond. Right, Georgia doesn't have its act together, so it takes them 6 days. And on August 7th, Georgia finally sends in military forces into South Ossetia on a broad front. Right, so this is South Ossetia. Here's an actual picture. This is my drawing. It's kind of rough sketch of it, but it's pretty close, right? Now, they send in forces along a broad front, but their main focus was their capital of South Ossetia, this Tishikveli, or whatever, I don't know how to say it. All right, right there, Tishikveli, all right. And then the very next day, Putin uses Georgia's military occupation of South Ossetia as a pretext to invade Georgia in order to get the Georgian president to guarantee not to join NATO, which he does. And then Putin backs out, starts withdrawal of his troops on August 18th, only 11 days after invading Georgia, with no seizure of the Baku pipelines. Here are the Baku pipelines, oil and gas running through Georgia. All right, okay. Now, if for an offensive move, Putin would have taken that, but instead he only got Georgia to promise not to join NATO, and then he backed out. All right. So is that offensive or is that defensive? All right. I mean, you know, I'm gonna get. I know I'm gonna get some, you know, half-witted people who cannot think. Say, "Oh, that's offensive." Oh, come on, that's totally defensive, and it's a total reaction to the U.S. threat of NATO membership. All right. You know, I know there's gonna be people. Oh, that's offensive. It's debatable. God. Right. I mean, you know, for anyone, I mean, how do you? It's like arguing with a 3-year-old. How do you argue with a 3-year-old when they can't possibly comprehend? All right, so what I say, and this is kind of my joke, right? It was almost like 50 First Dates. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie 50 First Dates. I'll just show you a little clip here. All right.
Easy on me. Hey, I'm a person, not a seal, huh?
Well, I am a vet, not a doctor, so just hold still or I won't give you a treat. I know.
Ow.
Okay, you see that, kid? You see what happens when you play with sharks?
Now why you gotta spread those lies? Sharks are like bugs. They only bite when you touch their private parts.
Okay.
Hey, that's a good title for my documentary. Sharks. They only bite when you touch their private parts.
All right. So that's kind of like what's going on here. Putin's like a dog. He only bites when you touch his private parts. Well, that's what we're doing. We're jamming Russia on the private parts. You think that's an accident? There's no way this is totally intentional. It's jamming Russia with a threat. Then they react. And then it's, oh, they're such a military aggressor. So now I'm saying, was Putin tricky? Putin was tricky, but hey, we were more tricky. We set it up. Right? Putin did the exact same maneuver that the British and French did in 1956 with the Suez Crisis. Right? It's the same maneuver. I don't know if he was inspired by it, but he did the exact same thing the British and French did. So here's the background to that. Now, after World War II, after the big war, Germany and Japan are beaten up. All their colonial possessions are taken away from them. They don't have squat, right? The sole remaining big colonial powers were Britain, France, and the U.S., because we did neo-colonialism. We didn't do much formal colonialism, but we did plenty of neo-colonialism. And then there were other smaller ones like, Netherlands, Belgium, Portugal, still hanging on to some stuff, right? All right, but the two big ones were Britain and France, that were the last two big colonial powers with possessions around the world. Then in 1956, President Nasser of Egypt, this guy here, he nationalized the Suez Canal right here, all right, seizing it from British-French ownership. The Suez Canal was built by the French, but I think British obtained majority ownership of it at some point. But they shared it, whatever the arrangement was there. They both had stock shares of it. If Britain and France did nothing to fight this, it would set a precedent that would be copied by British and French colonial possessions around the world, setting off a massive jailbreak. And they nationalized everything. If they did nothing, Well, everyone's going to say, well, what the hell? Why don't we do it? And it'd be a big jailbreak, too big to stop. And it'd be, kind of like what happened to Spain in 1810. Remember, the Napoleonic Wars are going on, and then Napoleon tried to set up his continental system to conduct economic warfare on Britain, but British goods are still flowing through Portugal into Spain, so he invades Spain in 1808. Well, with Spain getting his butt kicked by Napoleon, all the Spanish colonies in America said, hey, right, the cat's away, right, hey, let's go play. So they all declare independence, including Portuguese Brazil. That's all of Central and South America. Go free, right? It's a jailbreak. Well, that same thing would happen. That's why you got to nip it in the bud. Fight the first one, right? So Britain and France got Israel to attack. So what they did is Britain and France got Israel, here's Israel, to attack Egypt, right? And once the conflict was underway, Britain and France used that excuse as a pretext to insert troops. Now, were they peacekeeping troops that went in Sinai? No. They went straight for the Suez Canal. They took the canal, right? So it was a pretext. That's the same thing Putin did. He set it up, right? He offers protection to South Ossetia, and then he got South Ossetia to start their operations here, August 1st, start bombing Georgia. He knows that Georgia's going to have to respond with military forces, and that as soon as they go into to South Ossetia, right, he's going to use that as his pretext to invade. Right? Now he's got leverage over the president of Georgia, right? Right? He's got troops there. So he gets him, he twists his arm and says, hey, don't join NATO. And the guy agrees. So then Putin backs out. Right? Now, it was a defensive move. All right, now, I say here, further, by invading Georgia, I believe Putin killed two birds with one stone, choosing the easier stone because invading Georgia is much easier than invading Ukraine. A big country, right? Long supply lines. Georgia's small. Yet it no less sent a warning to Ukraine not to join NATO. But still, I'm telling you, right, Russia had trouble in this operation in Georgia. They had difficulty. Right? Don't tell me Russia's this vast, scary military threat. Now, was the U.S. action, in this case, fair play in terms of free market business competition? Hell no. This was totally political military involvement. NATO, political military, which is the sort of thing that has in the past led to economic nationalism, and that then has led to wars. Major wars. World War I, World War II. All right? All right, we complain and attack China. Hey, don't subsidize your damn steel industry. Well, they shouldn't, right? That's okay to attack them on that. They should, right? But why should we do subsidize, and why should we play these political military games, right? USA jammed Russia with a big threat. Ukraine and Georgia joining NATO, that's a big threat. There's 4 ways that's a threat. 1, it's a gas threat. Okay? By giving military protection, military umbrella to Ukraine, you encourage even more bad Ukraine behavior. More theft, more non-payment, bigger bills not paid, contract violations. That's what they're doing. And then you give military protection to non-Russian gas. So, right, you can cut this off to Ukraine, but now you're giving protection to the non-Russian gas route. Right? All the gas coming through either Turkmenistan or Shah Deniz Field going through Georgia. All right. And then now you got NATO on Russia's doorstep. Remember what this guy says, Dmitry, whatever, the spokesman, right? Let's take a look. All right, let's take a look. So where's Ukraine? Right on Russia's doorstep. Where's Georgia? Right here. Right on Russia's doorstep. You're jamming Russia. Everything, they're being pushed back as it is. You already got Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, right? You got Poland here, Hungary, Bulgaria, or Hungary, Romania here. All this is part. Czech Republic, Slovakia. All part of NATO. All right, where are we at here? And then a key thing is 4, right? Loss of Russian military base in Crimea. All right. Now, since 1783, Crimea has been Russia's military stronghold in the Black Sea, and it just makes sense, right? Look at the Black Sea here. Is the Black Sea important to Russia? Right? Is it important maritime commercial route? Right? Protecting all the commerce coming from Russia here through the Sea of Azov, right through here, Russia here through here, right, going through the Bosphorus and Dardanelles, right, pipelines coming through here, Blue Stream, Turk Stream, right. Russia has, keep in mind, Russia is a landlocked nation except for 3 maritime routes, right? The northern route up here, right? The Baltic Sea route here, and the Black Sea route through the Bosphorus Dardanelles here, right? And each of them are highly susceptible to being cut off. These have strategic choke points, right? This choke point's called the Greenland, Iceland, UK gap here, easily cut off here. This one is called the Cataract Straits here, even easier cut off, right? Going through those treacherous straits between Denmark and I guess that's Sweden here. Sweden, yeah. And then you got the Bosphorus Dardanelles, easy to cut off, right? Russia's vulnerable, right? This is important. It's strategic for the Black Sea. So this is where they put all the military bases. Here's a picture of all the military bases. The main one of which is Sevastopol, naval. But it's got like 5 or 6 air bases. It's got a bunch of missile bases. It's got what's it got? It's got a Coast Guard base in addition. It's got a Marine base. All sorts of bases here. Right? That's Russia's stronghold here. And if Ukraine joins NATO, are they going to get to keep that? Hell no. What is the raison d'etre of NATO? It was formed to defend against the Soviet Union, and it was kept to defend against Russia. So the purpose of the existence of NATO is against Russia. Now, how are you going to have a NATO nation with Russian bases inside it? Right? They stand to lose all that. Right? So, that's a big threat to Russia. Right? Loss of Ukraine to NATO. Right? Does that make sense? And then I say this. So the importance of Crimea to the Black Sea is analogous to the importance of Italy to the Mediterranean. And this is exactly what Admiral Mahan said back in his book, Sea Power, The Influence of Sea Power in History, published way back in 1890. Right? He said, hey, Italy holds a dominant position in the Mediterranean, controlling all east-west traffic in it, if not for the fact that Britain held Malta, right about there, little island there, right? So Italy holds the same position as Crimea, right? That's why they jammed all their military bases there. It's a key strategic point there, right? Guards the entire damn thing. Review of U.S. actions. So here's a review. U.S. actions threatening Russian gas. Right? 1982, Reagan administration tries to block the Urengoy, Pomeroy, and Uzunrad pipeline to Europe. Right? And that's a whole Cold War exigency. Perceived threat of increased Soviet influence over Europe and increased revenues. They can use that to build weapons. All right, whatever. And then 1996, 98, 99, U.S. promotion of Trans-Caspian pipeline as a non-Russian alternative for gas to Europe, right? So this is U.S. government support for business, which has clear geopolitical objectives. I don't have a problem with this. I don't have a problem with government supporting U.S. businesses, right? Right. So long as we don't get into subsidizing private companies, because that's crossing the line to me. All right, now NATO membership for Ukraine and Georgia, right? Right? This is a clear threat to Russia. This is NATO military umbrella to cover Ukraine's bad behavior and at the same time to cover the non-Russian source of gas to replace Russian gas going through Ukraine. Right? Now today you got the House, Senate, and State Department attacking the Nord Stream and Turk Stream 2 pipelines with sanctions, and I'll discuss that in tomorrow's lesson here. Right? So I say this as a conclusion. It is so obvious that pushing NATO membership for Ukraine and Georgia together would pose a serious strategic threat to Russia that you know this was no accident. They didn't do this randomly. They put them together intentionally. I mean, no one is that stupid. I mean, you have to be seriously a brain-dead zombie not to see that. I mean, you know, I don't know what you have to be in a coma. All right, maybe if you're in a coma, right, on life support, maybe you won't see that. You know, the U.S. was intentionally jamming Russia with a threat. It was a classic get you again game. Right, you jam them with a threat, and when they react, right, you portray their action as aggression and military threat. You know. And, okay, they're going to attack the rest of Europe. Then, one, this justifies big defense appropriation bills. And, two, it likely played, in all probability, it played a role in Poland's sudden flip from rejecting installation of U.S. anti-ballistic missiles in Poland to accept it. All right? So, you know that the U.S. was trying to push this on Poland for a long time, and Poland was debating this. Right? Finally, after long consideration, they decided on July 4th of 2008 to reject the U.S. plan to install anti-ballistic missiles in Poland. Right? And then, on August 8th, Russia invades Georgia, like I said. Right? Well, that it comes across as Russian aggression. So that scares Poland. All right? So what does Poland do? It flips in, what is this? It flips in a little over a month, right? Only 6 days after Russia invaded. 6 days, they make the decision, well, we got to accept those missiles. So it does a 180 turnaround and accepts the U.S. plan for ABMs. Now, what does this do? This destabilizes the nuclear balance, right? And so this is a threat to Russia. You're jamming a threat with Russia again. Now, what does Russia do? It abrogates the INF Treaty. So how does the U.S. respond to it? Russian aggression, right? They're violating this treaty. Well, we violated this treaty, right? We abrogated the ABM treaty, jammed them with missiles there, right? So they respond, they react defensively, and then what do? Then we violate the INF Treaty, and we're accelerating building intermediate nuclear range missiles, right? So it's just fueling the arms race, right? You see how it works, right? And then this shifts a big amount of national collective resources towards people who are going to make a lot of money off of this, all right? Over $1 trillion just for revamping the nuclear weapons alone. That doesn't include all the conventional side of it. All right. All right. So what's key to know is by threatening Russia with Ukraine, Georgia membership in NATO, accelerated membership in NATO, we raised the gas threat to to Russia. All right. Increasing Ukraine bad behavior, we increased the threat of non-Russian gas, right? We put NATO right on Russia's doorstep in both Ukraine and Georgia, and then they lose all their military bases, their key strategic point in the Black Sea. Right? We'll talk about this in detail later. The whole 2014 Russian seizure of Crimea and annexation of it. All right, that's it for that lesson. Hope it made sense. All right. It was about U.S. efforts to attack Russian gas, right, including the NATO threat to Georgia and Ukraine in 2008, right? Which created more conflict, which I explained right here. Okay.